Hello and welcome to Not That This, the pop culture talk show where I interview artists and influencers to find out their fool's gold and hidden gems. Those massively popular things that they hate and those unknown or underrated masterpieces that they love. My name's Geraint and I'm fine with that. So, this is episode 5, the last of our launch episodes, and you can hear the 5th and final choice of our potential theme musics playing in the background. You can help me choose which one should be the official music of the podcast, and I'll tell you how to do that at the end of the episode. This episode is a little bit different. It's the first I recorded outside of the Edinburgh Fringe. There are more to come from that time, but I wanted to mix things up to give a good account of the different kinds of people, different kinds of artists that I've spoken to, but also to show the breadth of topic that this podcast has and can tackle. In this interview, I speak to Arun Gandhi. He's an author and an activist and many other things, but he also happens to be the grandson of the great Mahatma Gandhi. He lived with and was taught by his grandfather, so as you might expect, it is not a conversation where we bang on about comic books or whatever. It's deeper than that. It's political and philosophical. I met up with Mr. Gandhi while he was promoting his new book, The Gift of Anger, at Topping's bookshop in Bath. They're not paying me to say that, but they did give us tea and biscuits, so fair's fair. But in the month or so since we spoke, I've found myself returning to this conversation a lot in my mind. There's a weight to it, a positive one. Of course, we recorded in an open bookshop, so expect some little moments of background noise. There's some lovely jazz music being pumped out of the speakers. I'm not going to go on anymore. Here's the interview. Hello, Arun Gandhi. How are you?
I'm good. It's been nice to come out from London and into Bath. It's a beautiful area and quiet. And
yeah, it's a lovely, beautiful city. Mm-hmm. Nice and small as well, which I prefer in my cities.
Yes.
And we're in a lovely little bookshop as well, a proper bookshop. Toppings.
Exactly. It's what a bookshop should be.
Yes.
Nice and small and cozy and good books.
Absolutely, yeah. So you're here to talk about, you're giving a talk or a reading from your new book, The Gift of Anger.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the promotional materials for this book, I was sort of looking over them, and sort of the spark from it is something that your grandfather, the great Mahatma Gandhi, said to you about anger being good, mm-hmm. Because it gives you the energy to find out right from wrong, essentially.
Exactly.
And like I love that because I think about this a lot. I think that anger is a positive emotion, actually. Mm-hmm. You know, I think sometimes people withdraw rather than fight.
Quite true, yeah. But they withdraw out of fear instead of a positive thing. I mean, being afraid and withdrawing and not doing anything about it is not very good either.
No.
Just abusing anger is not very good. So what we need to do is to find a solution to the problem that caused the anger. And the solution usually requires that we talk with each other and try to figure out how best we can resolve this issue. And so, when this lesson came to me because I suffered a lot of prejudice in South Africa as a little boy, and they just didn't like me because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
I was beaten up by whites and then by blacks, and it filled me with a lot of rage, typical reaction.
Yeah.
I wanted to fight back again and get revenge. And that's when my parents decided to take me to India. And I spent 2 years with grandfather, and he taught me about anger. The very first lesson, he said, you should know that anger is like electricity. It's just as good and just as useful, but only if we use it intelligently. But
Wow.
It can be just as deadly and destructive if we abuse it. So just as we channel electrical energy and bring it into our lives and use it for the good of humanity, we must learn to channel anger intelligently so that we can use that energy for the good of humanity rather than abuse it and cause violence.
Wow, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is, because, today Harvard University recently did a study, and they came to the conclusion that more than 80% of the violence that we experience in our lives as well as in our national lives is generated by anger. We get angry and we say things and do things that we regret later on.
Yeah.
But then it's too late to do anything about it. So it's better that we learn about anger and learn to channel that energy intelligently.
Yeah, so it's about learning sort of new ways to deal with anger.
Learning new ways. Also, he emphasized the fact that we need to have a strong mind. Much of the anger happens and we abuse it because we don't have a strong mind. And the result is that immediately we flash into anger and react without thinking. And, he used to say that we pay so much attention to a strong physical body that we do a lot of physical exercises, but we never do any mental exercises for a strong mental mind.
Right.
And so he made me sit in a room quietly every day for a few minutes, look at a flower and focus on that flower for 1 minute, and then close my eyes and see how long I can keep that image in my mind's eye. In the beginning, I found the moment I closed my eyes, the image vanished. But when I did this regularly every day, I found that I could keep that image longer and longer. And to that extent, my mind was coming under my control.
Wow.
So when you get angry, you can control your mind not to do something foolish, but to think about some way in which it can be resolved peacefully.
I mean that's incredible, because so your grandfather he's like an icon of pop culture now, right? Mm-hmm. Still, he's found a new home. His words have found a new home on Twitter and Facebook and all these social media apps where things he's spoken have been shared, and it's hard to think of him now as a real person.
Yeah. that
was here and had a message. Mm-hmm. And so the experience you're describing, like it makes him sound like a sensei, like a master, a great educator that you studied under.
Yes, I think it was all that he learned through his own experiences, and it helped him considerably, and so he started teaching it to others.
Well, as you should, I suppose, if you have a...
Yeah, I think that's what all of us need to do, that if we find something good that has helped us, that we should share it with others. That's what life is about.
Absolutely. And you've taken on your grandfather's message. Do you feel like you're sort of carrying his torch, like you're taking up the mantle of sort of his speech about non-violence, and because you've chosen a career which puts you into
I must be modest, and I don't think I can ever carry his mantle or get to the level that he did and did all the things that he did. But what I'm trying to do is what I learned from him and how it helped me in my life, and I want to share that with other people in a modest way so that they too can improve their life. Because ultimately, we need to remember that civilization or progress is not achieved only through education in schools.
Yeah.
It is achieved more by transforming ourselves to become better human beings. But today, because of the materialistic lifestyle that we have chosen, our scholastic education is all about giving a young person a career to exploit in their adult life and make money.
Yeah.
It's not about character, it's not about how to understand yourself and your meaning of life and so on. And that, unfortunately, now In these days, earlier we used to get that from our parents, but now parents have to work also, and so children grow up with strangers in nurseries and daycare centers and schools and babysitters and so on. So they don't get it at home either. So it's up to them now to realize that they can either exist like most of us do now, or we can make that effort to become a better human being, to find our own weaknesses and transform those weaknesses into strengths. Now, each one of us has a weakness, lots of weaknesses.
Yeah.
In our character, in our relationships and all that. Some of it is inherited, some of it is because of the societal pressures, and we need to recognize them and do something to change them. Then we would really be truly civilized human beings. Then we will learn to look at each other and respect each other as human beings, and not identify people by their race and their color and their religion and all the things that we divide people today with.
Yeah. Wow. So it's about educating character, maybe, rather than sort of book learning.
It's about educating the self and knowing the meaning of life and what does.
Oh, if you find that out, too, tell me.
The meaning of life is to have a purpose in life, a positive purpose, and your existence should mean something to all the people around you. It should leave a positive impression on them, and the more people you can influence positively, the better your life is. It's not about selfishness. Unfortunately today, most people will tell you that the meaning of life is make money and enjoy yourself and be selfish. But that's not the meaning of life in the true sense.
It's not a fulfilling pursuit, really.
Yeah.
It's empty.
Right.
So do you, we'll get onto the meat of this podcast in a minute, but as we're talking about sort of how society has changed and how people interact now and grow and educate themselves, like, your grandfather, he spoke a lot, he preached non-violence, as you do, you're an activist for that cause. Do you look at the world today where in so many countries, like worldwide, this is happening, there is this sort of rise of intolerance? For me, I feel like society is sleepwalking back into a darker time. I suppose, is that hard for you to think that maybe people have forgotten this message?
Yeah, I don't know whether we really had the message to forget it, because right from the beginning we have always partitioned people. We have always always wanted to be among ourselves, among people who looked like us. It's been in human nature. And so, in the early days, people lived separately. They had their own countries and they lived there. And so the interaction between different people was not as much as it is today. Yeah. Now the world has shrunk and people move around and they come and live next door to you, and so that the whole structure is upended, and the result of that is that we, instead of learning about them and welcoming them and embracing them, we want to keep them away from us. And so the discrimination begins there. And then we just continue the process. We discriminate on the basis of the religion, on the basis of their sexual preferences, on the basis of what they look like, their size.
Yeah.
And all of these things we invent reasons to segregate and discriminate against people, which is bad, which we don't really need. And now the second worst thing that is happening in the world is that we are teaching people to tolerate. And so, everybody is talking about tolerating diversity. And tolerating diversity is not what we need. Because tolerating means that, I can't do anything about your being here, and so I'm just going to tolerate you.
Yeah, it's not coming together, it's just...
Yeah, what we really need is respect for each other.
Absolutely.
And that is what we need to teach people, and that's what my grandfather taught me, that we must not tolerate people, but we should respect people. Whoever they are, wherever they come from, whatever their standing in life, they are human beings.
Yeah.
And they must be respected.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's an incredible, message, which I wish more people were currently paying attention to. Okay, so let's get into the first question of this podcast. I'd like to know that while we're talking about things that we don't like, what's your fool's gold? What's out there that's huge that you really don't like?
I think this inability of people to get along with each other, to respect each other, the hate and the prejudice and everything that goes on in the world today, which is leading to more and more violence and killings, and now terrorism has come into the equation, and we are, getting, I think, in many ways more and more uncivilized as far as our interrelationships are concerned.
Yeah.
And that is a very sad thing, and I just hope that we would be able to turn things around and learn to respect each other.
Yeah, I mean, so this sort of rise of right-wing populism, which is...
Yeah, right-wing populism everywhere, and we see now in the United States and in Europe, the right-wing threatened to take control of the government. Fortunately, they didn't, but in the U.S. we did. In India we did, and the result is chaos and more hate and more prejudice. And in many ways, I think, Trump coming into power has set the United States back 100 years.
In terms of sort of views.
Yeah, in terms of all the human relationships.
Yeah. I
mean, he's brought hate and prejudice back again into everyday life. And when a society is so driven by hate and prejudice, they can't really make any progress.
No, you're stuck in a...
Yeah.
I mean, you can't improve if you're constantly fighting each other. Right?
Exactly. When you're fighting each other and blaming each other and cursing each other, I mean, we can say the government is almost at a standstill.
Yeah.
And everything else is going to be at a standstill in there, and it's just going to be chaos.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's something we touched on at the start. Like, there's this complete inability to meet in the middle. Like, there's a polarization in society at the moment, and I do blame both sides. I'm very left leaning, so I like to talk about the other guys more. But I think there's a problem on both sides of sort of refusing to talk to each other. Really, to just go, no, you're evil, or no, you're naive.
Yeah, because we built such a gulf between the two, and what the right wing stands for and what the left wing stands for are two poles apart, and they can't find a common ground to talk about. And that's where we are stuck at the moment. I'm also a left-winger, may not be entirely at the other end of the spectrum, but my leanings are more to the left. And my heart bleeds for people who are poor and destitute in the country and all over the world.
Yeah.
And we need to do something about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is an idea that's sort of consuming me at the moment. Sort of in the States and here in the UK. So I'm Welsh, right? I'm from Wales, which is part of the United Kingdom, right? And the United Kingdom is one of the richest countries in the world, as is the United States. But Wales is sort of categorised by the EU as an area of serious economic deprivation. So people are not being looked after despite being one of the richest countries in the world. This happens all across the United States of America as well. What is the point of that money?
Exactly.
If it's not helping anyone.
It's greed. And you know, those who have more power, those who have the ability to grab much of the pie, they grab it. It's greed. This is the whole age of greed. And that greed is going to destroy us eventually.
Well, I mean, I think... I try to be optimistic, but it looks like it's starting to, you know. I think more people need to talk, well, like you're doing, I suppose, with, you know, you speak to the UN and...
Yes, I try to, I call myself a peace farmer.
A peace farmer? What a wonderful term.
And I go and plant seeds of peace in the minds of people and hope and pray that we'll get a good crop one day, a good crop of peacemakers. And because I can't, you know, I don't have the capacity that great people like my grandfather and others have to reach out to so many people and influence them.
Yeah.
So in a modest way, I do whatever I can to influence people in terms of telling them what is the right thing. Then it's up to them to think about it, and whether they accept it or not, it's I can't do much about it. It's your responsibility. So I think it's very much like a farmer.
Yeah, no, I like the metaphor. It's nice. I suppose that's all we can do, right? Is whatever we can do.
Yeah, we, you know, many people do have this ambition, and they look at the big picture, and they want to change the whole world, that they want to put an end to poverty and all these things, and then they find that they don't have the capacity to do it, and they get burnt out and give up on it. But if we have modest goals that we can achieve, and once we have achieved that goal, then we can go to the next goal. People don't want to do that. They want to jump from the ground to the 10th floor in one leap.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a... And that's part of today's society as well, there's sort of a rise in impatience, I think. Everything needs to happen now, because I think so much of our media now, so much of it, everything is immediate.
Yeah.
We have access to so much information, so much whatever we want, entertainment.
We focus more on the results than the action.
Yeah.
And we try to figure out the result first before we take the action. And when we can't figure out the results, we give up and don't do anything at all.
So many people are consumed with the idea of what they will have once they've got all the stuff.
Exactly.
That they're not doing the things. Okay, so let's move on to something a bit more positive. So I'd like your hidden gem. So this would be something that's flying slightly under the radar that you wish more people knew about.
Well, when I started doing this work many years ago, it's almost 30 years since I've been doing this, and
wow.
A lot of young people, college students and university students and others would come and they ask me, so, you know, we as independent individuals, we just one person, what can we do to change the world? We don't have the power, you know.
Yeah.
And so one day I decided, and because of my background in India and working there, I knew of some programs in India that were done by individuals which made a tremendous difference in the lives of millions of people.
Okay.
And so I got about 10 of these programs and identified them, and I developed a tour, a Gandhi Legacy tour.
Okay.
And I started taking these students out to India and go to all of these projects and see how one person has made a difference in the lives of millions. And I was hoping that that would inspire them, and they would then be able to go back to their country and do something similar.
Okay.
There. And this has been going on for about 17, 18 years now. Once we had a group of young women from Wellesley College.
Okay.
Now, Wellesley College is high upscale women's college where they teach all these women, being independent and doing things for themselves and so on.
Okay.
And so we had a group of them come on this tour. And I had told them in the beginning, I said, this is a modest tour. We travel by buses and trains, and we go into the villages. And sometimes you may not get all the luxuries you are accustomed to, so you should be prepared for it. And they said, oh yes, we are fine, no problems. Then we got on the tour, and I think about fourth or fifth day, traveling through the villages, they started getting a little restless.
Right.
Because in the villages, although the accommodation was very clean and nice, but they didn't have things like showers.
Right.
So at the bathroom, you would have to fill up a bucket with water and pour it over yourself and have a bath. These women had never done that. They didn't know how to do it. And not just them, but I've noticed all Americans who came,
Yeah.
they didn't know how to have a bath in a bucket. They wanted a shower. And so after these 4 or 5 days, they started murmuring among themselves, when are we going to have a proper shower and wash our hair, and when will we sleep in a proper bed? And then a few days later, we reached the city of Ahmedabad.
Right.
And somebody had opened a 5-star hotel there. And as a promotion, they were giving rooms to us at half the price.
Okay. Nice.
So our agent took the offer, and we were booked there. And so when we assembled in the lobby to get our rooms assigned, you should have seen the excitement in these women. They were so excited to see all the luxuries that they were accustomed to.
Yeah.
And they started jumping with joy and saying, oh, finally we're going to have a shower. Finally we're going to sleep in a proper bed and all that kind of thing. And then they went up to their rooms and looked out of the window, and they saw all the poverty just below their hotel, and people living in horrible subhuman conditions. So they came looking for me and said, Mr. Gandhi, we've got to move from here. So I said, why? You were so overjoyed moments ago. Why do you want to move now? And they said, well, we looked out of the window and we saw all that poverty, and we feel guilty that they have to live in that misery and we are living in this luxury. So I said, well, this is going to be a learning experience for you. We are not moving from here, but every day that we are here, I want you to look out of the window and see how the other half of the world lives.
Yeah.
Because this is the reality of the world. And because you don't have a window to the other half of the world in the United States, you can forget about them and not pay any attention. But here you're going to see every day. And I hope that that will be a lesson for you to know what your responsibility is towards improving the lives of those people.
Wow.
I don't know whether they learned anything from it or not, but it was an eye-opener for them. It was something that they had never experienced before. And then we took them on the tour, and there are some projects there that are really amazing projects. One of them was started by a lady called Ela Bhatt,
Right.
and she came from a well-to-do family, and when she was young, she saw all the poverty of the women, and she realized that in a poverty situation, the women suffered the most.
Right.
Because the husbands were always out, they were working, and they would drink they would say they want to drown their sorrows, and they would waste the money on drinks. So it was the women who had to find the means to feed the children and keep the house running and so on. So she got together a few women and gave them small loans and helped them in some little way
Right,
that
yeah.
they could invest that money and make more money, and started
Wow, yeah.
a trade. Mostly, buying vegetables and taking it from door to door,
Yeah.
selling it at a little higher price, and making some money that way. And those women were very successful. They were able to make money and support their families. Then more people came, and more of them wanted help from her, but she had limitations, like all of us have. So she got them to attach to her bank,
Okay.
where she banked her money. She went and spoke to the manager there and said, "You should help these women." So he undertook this thinking that there will be just a few women. But gradually the number of women kept increasing. And then this guy started worrying about the bottom line and about, if these women run away with the money, how am I going to explain to my shareholders? And so these women came back to Miss Bhatt and said, this commercial bank thing is not going to work. They are not very helpful. They don't know about our plight, and so we got to find a different way. So she said, "What do you have in mind?" She says, "Well, can't we have our own bank?"
Wow.
These illiterate women, poverty-stricken women, asking her, "Can't we have our own bank?" So Ela Bhatt laughed at them and said, "You don't even know how to sign your name, and you want to open a bank?" They said, "Yeah, we'll learn how to sign our name. You teach us." So they sat all night at her home and learned how to sign their names. And the next day they went to the registration office, got all the forms, filled them out and signed them, and applied for permission to open a cooperative bank.
Wow.
And today that bank has flourished. These women are sitting on the board of the bank and deciding what they are going to do. And they have changed the lives of 9 million women.
Wow, that's incredible.
Through giving them loans. They're doing much more creditable work than any of the commercial banks.
Yeah.
And they're continuously expanding. Now the latest is they want to take this idea to Afghanistan and help the women in Afghanistan.
Wow.
So, this one woman started the project, and look how it's expanded in 30 years.
That's incredible.
It's just grown amazingly.
And I think we rarely see institutions like that open for good reasons as well, if you know what I mean.
So that is one project. Then there's another one called Barefoot College.
Okay.
Which another middle-class young man passed out of the Indian Institute of Technology.
Okay.
And his parents had the dream that he would take a good job and get married and settle down and have a nice family and life. but he wanted to go and serve the poor people for 1 year. So he begged his parents to give him a year off after his graduation so that he could go and help the poor people set up something and then take a job and settle down. So they reluctantly agreed, and he went. And he also saw that the women suffered the most in poverty. And so he gathered the women, and in 6 months he taught them how to become solar engineers.
Wow, okay.
Build solar panels,
Yeah.
wiring their homes and connecting the panels and everything from A to Z. They were taught the whole thing. And then they went out and started electrifying their own homes. And now they've electrified hundreds of villages through solar energy.
That's amazing.
And those women have not only transformed the villages, but transformed their lives, because they are earning money now and providing light and electricity for the villages and maintaining it. So their status has risen. Even the men respect them highly and talk to them as equals. So he was very encouraged by that, and he decided to start this Barefoot College and teach women in many villages. So he's created this whole 6-month course.
Right.
And over the years now, he's been there. He went for a year, but he's stuck there for 35 years. And in the 35 years, he's trained thousands of women, and all of them are working in the solar energy program and creating, very cheap solar panels and connecting them to their villages. The United Nations came to know about this program, and they requested if he would take students from Africa, some of the poor African countries, and teach them. So he said yes, provided they are totally ignorant and totally impoverished. He says, I don't want people from middle class or anything. And totally impoverished women. So they agreed to it, and they send batches of women from many African countries. They come there for 6 months and learn all these things. And it's fascinating to see how uneducated Indian women are teaching uneducated African women. They don't have a common language. They can't speak to each other, and yet they are, interacting beautifully and living together beautifully and teaching each other, and it's an amazing experience.
Sounds like an incredible project. Wow! I mean, I think you've chosen the most worthy hidden gems I've had so far.
Well, I have 10 of them, but 2 are good enough.
I mean, they're incredible. Are they linked in any way, or are these just separate projects?
No, separate, independently working together.
Okay, wow. Wow, okay, so we're coming to the end now, so feels a bit trivial to do this now after what we talked about so far, but I usually end the interview with some just quick fire questions. So these will be your favourite and your least favourite of a bunch of different mediums.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, books, TVs, bands, or musicians, So what is your favourite musician?
Favorite musician?
Yeah.
A Scottish young lady, Femi Gow.
Okay.
She plays the harp and she plays piano and she sings, and she's beautiful to look at and beautiful music to produce.
Incredible. What's your least favourite musician? Is there someone that you listen to and you just go, oh God, no, none of that?
Well, I can't name a particular musician that's least favorite, but anybody who brings negativity in music and, like a lot of this violent rap music and all that, which really serves the no purpose to anybody except encouraging more anger and hate.
Yeah.
That kind of music I don't think we need in this world.
Fair enough. So your favourite... Well, we're here in a bookshop. What's your favourite book?
Oh, my favorite book...
This is always the hardest one for people.
Yeah, it is. In fiction, I think I like David Baldacci.
Okay.
More than anybody. And the least favorite of fiction is James Patterson.
Okay, fair enough. Favorite movie?
I'm not much of a movie goer, so that's going to be a hard one for me to pick.
Well, it's quite interesting actually. So, because I was reading today actually about you had a sort of interesting interaction with the movie Gandhi, right? About your grandfather, because you came out sort of against the Indian government's funding of it.
Yeah.
And then you retracted your statement afterwards. You were like, actually, no, I've seen it. It's great.
Yeah, well, my objection to it was that, India was poor at the time and they couldn't really afford to spend $25 million making a movie. And I thought that it wasn't what my grandfather would have wanted.
Yeah.
He was against all these statues and all that. He says, that's all a waste of money.
Yeah.
That the money can better be invested to help the poorer people. So that was the stance I took about the film there. And of course, after the film was made and when I went and saw it, I realized that this film is going to bring the message, Gandhi's message of non-violence and peace, to more people around the world than all the books that have been written about him.
Yeah.
So I retracted my statement.
That's fair enough. Okay, so there's just one more question, which people always struggle with. So, I mean, we talk about the film that was made of your grandfather's life. If someone was going to make the story of your life, what medium would you like them to make that in? And what would you call it?
Well, some people have been asking me to make a movie of my life, but I have been dissuading them because I don't think my life is worth producing a movie. I would rather that they produce a movie over the book, and that will be much more constructive than making a movie on my life.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you very much, Arun Gandhi, for joining me.
Thank you for having me on the show. It was quite unique and enjoyed it.
Wow. See what I mean? That's deep. I think this is the most awestruck I've been while recording. I think I grow into it, but at the start, certainly, I sounded a little bit nervous there. There's a sort of peaceful gravitas to Arun Gandhi that I don't think I ever really got over. And of course the projects that he speaks about are incredible and inspiring. I'll put a couple of links in the episode description if you want to learn more. As I mentioned at the top, you can help me choose the theme tune for the podcast. The first 5 episodes all have different songs, and I will then repeat them over the next 5. There are 3 ways you can vote, either by making a donation to the podcast on thatthispod.com and adding a comment to your payment. There are rewards for regular donations. Or, if you can't afford to make a donation, head over to iTunes and review the show, or if you can't do that, you can just share the podcast on social media, but please tag me in at thatthispod. So that I know which song that you want, I've come up with a little fun code, and the more creative you can be with this, the better. In the comment on your donation or in the review or share of the show, include the word ocelot for the music in episodes 1 and 6, tiger for episodes 2 and 7, thrush 3 and 8, fox 4 and 9, and falcon for this episode and episode 10. I'll tally them up, and whatever you decide will be the official Not That This theme music. Of course, if you've got anything else to say, you're welcome to email me too. I'd love to include some letters in the podcast, so if you've got some praise, advice, questions, suggestions, or abuse, do let me know. The email address is on the website, or if you fancy chancing your arm at spelling my name right, it's Geraint@thatthispod.com. During October, I'm going to be releasing 2 episodes a week. This is for a couple of reasons. One, as I've said before, when I find a new podcast, I like to be able to get into it. I like to know that it's not going anywhere. And also, while I am mixing it up a bit, I'd like to get closer to the actual timeline in which I'm doing these interviews. After October, we'll go back down to 1 a week. In the next episode, I'll be talking to Ben Norris. He's an actor and writer and spoken word artist, and I met up with him at the Fringe just a couple of days after he won the BBC Poetry Slam. And the other episode next week is with the fearsome comedy critic from The Scotsman, Kate Copstick. I'll catch you then.